What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. It's been a while since I've made a video. I've been making a lot of short form videos lately and experimenting with that type of content on the channel, and I want to thank you guys because that stuff has done extremely well so far on the channel. You guys have been upping the viewership. In fact, the month of November was my most watched month on the channel so far this year. So a good thing and a bad thing, because that means you guys aren't as interested in this type of content anymore. So with that being said, I hope that you guys will leave a like on the video. Make sure that you guys subscribe if you have not already, and leave a comment down below whether you're a fan of this type of content, the short form content, or any other type of content that you'd want to see on the channel. Without further ado, we are going to be making a tier list today, not in the traditional format of actually doing it on my PC and bringing it up. Instead, I'm just going to go through the franchise mode here that I have, one of my most recent franchise modes, with a couple of friends, and go through all offensive positions and rank them in the tier list. You guys should now see it pop up over on the screen over here. And we're going to put each position on the offense first in today's video on that tier list, and then in the follow-up video we're going to go through defensive positions. So in today's video we're going to have left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle, tight end, fullback, quarterback, and wide receiver, as well as running back. The first position that we want to review is quarterback. And where is quarterback going to fall within our tier list? This is a position that a lot of people are going to overrate to begin with in franchise mode. In fact, Sam Howell, if you look at him on the main roster, starts as like a 65 overall or somewhere in the 60s. This is a position that I maintain that within franchise mode is really not all that important whatsoever. You can always take a young, low overall, high potential, doesn't even have to have star or superstar player. Sam Howell did not have superstar, and I don't even think he had star to start. You can take one of those players and develop them up to be a very, very good starting quarterback. I mean, he's a superstar and only 23 years old now for me. And the only thing that I liked about him to start was that he had half decent mobility and he had good throwing power. Those are really the only requirements to have a half decent quarterback. Really, the only difference that you'll notice is when you start to see superstar and X Factor abilities on a quarterback, they will affect that player's accuracy, their throw power, their ability to get the ball out quick. And so those abilities are extremely useful and extremely important within franchise mode, but they are very easily attainable. You can get a good quarterback in any number of different ways. For that reason, there's kind of a balance here. I would traditionally say that this position is basically an F tier position. However, getting those superstar abilities and having those superstar abilities is rather important or valuable to your team. And so I'm going to slot in the quarterback position on the B tier here. It is not even close to the most important position on the offense or in this game at all. However, it can become a rather important position, especially whenever you are then a competitive team and you are trying to compete with other players that do have those abilities. Next up is going to be the running back position. It is a position that you can pick up some very, very low overall players, and you don't even need superstar abilities to make this position work for you. Really, there are a couple of different ways to attack the running back position, whether you're getting a big dude that's, 6'2", 220 plus, like Brian Robinson and those Derrick Henrys and Bo Scarboroughs and players like that just fall forward for 4 yards every play, or you're getting somebody that's a little bit more athletic that can help you in the passing game. It's really honestly very easy, and this kind of is reflective of real life, to find running backs that can do what you need them to do within franchise mode. And you honestly don't even need to develop them like you do with the quarterback position, because those superstar abilities, yeah, while they can be helpful, you're really never going to notice that much of a difference. Honestly, I thought Brian Robinson was better when he didn't have his X Factor and superstar abilities. And so for that reason, the halfback position is going to slot into the D tier, which then brings me to the fullback position, and I want to give this a higher tier than most other people would. I mean, most people would automatically slot this in to the F or the E tier, and that's pretty much where it belongs. I'm going to slot this in at the next to bottom level, the E tier, right above F tier. And the reason is this can be a difference maker in your run game. It's really never going to be a difference in the passing game. Madden's plays just don't allow for it. More often than not, I just find that having an athletic player at this position can be pretty helpful to your run game, getting them onto a linebacker or blocking somebody quicker. And so that's why they're not the last tier on the list, but they're not going to be any more important than throwing a block every once in a while. We then move on to the wide receiver position, where you'll see I have a slew of receivers from players I just drafted all the way up to X Factor players I've been working on quite a bit, like Jahan Dotson. I think Jahan Dotson really speaks to the usefulness of the wide receiver position, or how important it is within this game, within franchise mode. Realistically, it is much like the quarterback and the running back position in that you can find low overall players as long as they fit what you're trying to do, whether that be a speedster or potentially somebody that's a little bit taller and a bigger body, and you can develop them into very, very good receivers that are going to catch what you throw to them and get open on the routes that you want them to get open on. And so wide receiver position's really not going to be that important, but I will place it just below the quarterback position and just above the running back position. It really sandwiches there in between. So that means it's going to go into the C tier, and just without saying too much on it, it's very similar reasons behind it. And it is that players with abilities here will get open more often, and you will see the benefits of having those superstar and X Factor abilities. But number one, they're not necessary, and number two, they're not going to really change the game for you, at least not in my experience. Having players like this and having players that are lesser than that, there's really not that much of a difference. To be honest with you, I like this JoJo Early out of Alabama. He has been my best receiver on the season so far, and then next below him has been Curtis Samuel this season, and neither of those players have abilities. Honestly, they're just quick and shifty, and they break out of their routes pretty quickly, and guys like Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin are great, and I'm loving throwing the ball to them, but they rarely catch jump balls. They don't really do anything extra special within franchise mode that warrants them being any higher than C. We then take a look at the tight end position, where people will often underrate this position. And don't get me wrong, you can get away with very low-end players at this position, but you have to do it correctly if you want to get value out of the tight end position. There are a couple of important things to look for here that are going to influence your offense's play and really open up the offense in comparison to any of the other positions we've talked about so far. In fact, the tight end position for me is going to be an A tier position. This is a position that I prioritize right away within franchise mode, solving what I'm going to do at the tight end position. Like I mentioned with other positions, it's easy to find a good plug and play receiver. They can be low overall. It doesn't matter. Same for running back, same for quarterback and fullback, but at tight end, it's much harder to find a serviceable tight end. A lot of things that influence this would be your tight end speed, their blocking ability, and their height. And so those are different factors that will influence whether this can open up the game for you. A lot of times I like a tall tight end because they tend to catch things more often than they should, even for low overall players. And so yes, you can get away with low overall players at this position, but like you see here, I have prioritized these players. These aren't players that were on my team to begin with. I have prioritized getting an 89 speed tight end, a 6'6" tight end. And if we take a look at my practice squad, you'll notice that Cole Turner, who's 6'7", played a lot for my team last year. I have John Fitzpatrick, who is 6'7", and then I picked up another rookie tight end who is 6'6". So yes, I prioritize the tight end position far more than I would ever prioritize wide receiver, running back, fullback, or quarterback. They are just simply more important to find your solution than those other positions. Quickly, before we get to the offensive line positions, I'm going to group kicker and punter in with the offense, and so kicker is actually going to get a half decent grade from me, not going to be an F tier position. Kicker can actually be rather valuable. As you can see here, I focused on getting a 99 kick power kicker. He's up to superstar, and he's up to 90 kick accuracy, which is really important if you want to be able to hit long field goals and want to be able to eke out those extra points. So kicker, in my opinion, is just going to be in that E tier, not F tier, not bottom tier. It's not something you need to put a whole bunch of money into, a whole bunch of thought into, but it is a position you should think about a little bit, in contrast with the punter position, where really all you care about here probably is kick power. Get somebody with decent kick power, hopefully high 90s, mid 90s at least, and you're going to be fine. So this is going to be an F tier position, not something you really need to think about much, if ever. Moving on to the offensive line, we're going to talk about left tackle first and foremost, and this is going to be our only offensive S tier position. This is by far the most important offensive position to invest in, especially with Madden 23's changes to the pass rush and the fact that the pass rush gets in extremely quickly. Now, a lot of people will say that low overall offensive linemen play very similar to high overall offensive linemen, and yeah, that is relatively the case, but if you are an experienced Madden player, especially in franchise mode, especially on simulation settings, you will know, or you should notice, the difference between a good pass blocking and run blocking offensive lineman and a bad pass blocking or run blocking offensive lineman. I very quickly spend a lot of time investing in my offensive line and investing in specific ratings across the board on my offensive line. Left tackle of these positions being the most important. Of course, depending on what team you're on, if you're playing as a lefty like Tua, you're going to want your right tackle. This is going to be classified as the blind side offensive tackle to be the most important investment for your team. And you can easily see that on my team, I invested a first round pick last year in Andrew Voorhees, or he might have been a second round pick. Either way, he was my first pick in the draft, and a first round pick this year on Tristan Lee, who is a 76-77 overall offensive tackle. And I also brought in a guy in Ross Nixon. All of these players having significant upside at this tackle position, all of them being big athletic players, as you can see, 6'5", 6'6", 6'6", and all of them have reasonably good athleticism stats in the speed, acceleration, agility, and change of direction categories, which is extremely important for a left tackle that's going to be going up against most likely the best speed rusher on the opposing team. Going down the list of offensive linemen, we are then going to put left guard in the A tier. Your guards are way more important in the run game than most people will give them credit for. That is why I went out and got Tyler Linderbaum, Kendrick Green, and Sadiq Charles. The reasons for these players being good is not just their strength, not just their awareness or their run blocking stats, which is what you want at those run blocking guard positions, but more so their athleticism. It is hard to find athletic guards, but athleticism at the guard position is by far the most important trait that you can look for. You want a player that has 70s in their speed. You want a player, hopefully, that has high 70s in their acceleration and 70s and probably high 60s into 70s in their change of direction. And I think I said agility, but either way, you want an athletic guard that can go up and get onto a linebacker, that can pull and get out in front of your running back. Think about it this way. Your running back that has to wait for that block probably has 90 plus speed. Well, if you have a 60 or 50 speed guard, how are they ever going to get out in front of your running back that has 90 plus speed, 90 plus acceleration? That's what a lot of players don't understand about the guard positions, and so the left guard position gets that A tier, as well as the right guard position, who is going to get that A tier for the very exact same reasons. The center position is a little bit harder to rank, but a position that nonetheless has importance within the game because you need a strong center. You need a center that can root out big run-stopping defensive linemen and a player that needs to be able to pass block a little bit, and so they have to be a well-rounded player. For that reason, the center is also going to go A tier. I thought about putting them in that B tier because they don't need to be as athletic. They're not as often going to be going up to the second level to block somebody, so they're really not as hard to find a good player at this position, but you really want to focus on having a good center that has good strength, that has good run blocking, and has good impact blocking to be able to root out those big defensive tackles that they're going up against. Finally, we will have the right tackle position, which I am going to give a B tier rating on this tier list. Sam Cosmi here has been a great right tackle for me, but this position, not being the blind side, is a little bit different. And yeah, you want them to be a good pass blocker, and he's a pretty serviceable pass blocker. He doesn't let a whole lot past him. I wish he was a little bit better of a pass blocker, but not too much to complain about there. He's also a really good athlete. He could play at other positions. But this is a player that also has to be a decent enough run blocker, but they're not going to make or break your offensive line. As long as you get a guy that's serviceable at the right tackle position as opposed to just neglecting the right tackle position, you're going to get good offensive production behind them. Having a better right tackle is going to make your day a whole lot easier. Much more so than any of those other positions like running back, wide receiver, quarterback, so on and so forth. And that's why I do prioritize it still as a B tier position. But it is the least important, in my opinion, of all of the offensive line positions. Still rather important and still very helpful to have a good right tackle, but nonetheless not the most important offensive line position. One additional factor that I want to add into this when discussing all of the offensive linemen is that they still have a wonky system for development with offensive linemen. You're not going to see offensive linemen increase their dev rating, so it is harder to find stars and superstars at the position. And that's a big deal because it's much easier to get a dev rating on a receiver or a running back or a quarterback or any of those other positions that I talked about by just giving them the ball and playing well with them and getting challenges. That doesn't happen for offensive linemen, and so they are all more valuable than the other positions are. And so that is my offensive tier list for Madden 23 Franchise Mode, or Madden Franchise Mode in general. I hope you guys will watch episode number 2, where we slot in all of the defensive positions next to these offensive positions, and you guys can see how things stack up. With that being said, this has been Jacob Reed. I hope that you guys liked the video. Make sure you guys leave all that feedback down below, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you have a good one.